All right, so let's start. I just wanted to start with just a few figures to put us back in context. Today, more than 2 billion smartphones are being used in the world. The market penetration of this product is huge, especially in developed countries. The Gartner actually also states that more than 150,000 users are using the personal devices at work, blurring the boundaries and forcing the companies to adapt to this new usage. And in addition, this is the figure that is shown on this slide. The Gartner says that the need for app development will outstrip the production capabilities by 5 to 1. So there's going to be a huge need of app development. These figures are not just here to impress you. They actually mean something. It means that you have to take mobility into account. I'm pretty sure you know already this. But more than that, as enterprise mobility managers, you will need to find the right solutions for the growing bring your own device demand, the need to use the personal devices at work. And this demand may rise in the company, and you will also need to answer the app needs of the business units that are growing up in your company. Now, don't panic. There are ways to do that. Let's go over them together. We'll go over what is called an EMM. An EMM is an enterprise mobility management tool. They were developed to answer the growing need of device and app management in large corporations. They are mostly used to secure the device fleet. They're also used to make apps and corporate tools available on the employees' devices. They cover different features, configuration, compliance, encryption, and so on. But with the evolution of usage, they progressively extended their suite to even cover a wider range of products like IoT devices, for instance. App containerization in this context was an interesting technological leap that helped control corporate data by isolating business from personal usage. This actually means that you create a secure container on the device, dividing the enterprise side and the personal workspace on the same device. So for instance, an email attachment that has been downloaded and marked as enterprise cannot be forwarded or copy-pasted to applications that are outside of the enterprise container. So you have basically two types of EMM suite. One that is called MDM solution, mobile device management solution. And the second one is mobile application management solution, an MAM solution. We will go through both of them next. There are some solutions that cover actually the whole spectrum, that do both MDM and MAM, yet sometimes having a product that does everything is not always the best solutions, because you risk being trapped with a huge change cost, and you may also not get the latest features that are available on more advanced and specialized products. So choosing the best solution will actually depend on your needs and your use cases. So let's have a look at the two types of tools to see at what type of use cases they apply. The first tool is what we call an MDM, a mobile device management tool. They take a device approach in controlling, securing the whole smartphone and tablet. They take the full control of the device. They allow device configuration, data security, remote assistance, or even lockdown of the device. They now often integrate also an application distribution tool, but it's usually not the heart of their work. That's not where they focus on. But they now include almost all included too. So when should it be used? What are the good use cases for an MDM tool? Usually MDM are very, very, very highly actually recommended in high security environments where you have risk of fraud and stuff like this. I can think of governmental activities, military activities, even finance activities at some point can need an MDM type solution. MDMs are also well suited when you need to deploy apps on kiosk devices, devices that are available to the general public, and that you want to lock down on a specific app and that they cannot change. In these cases, MDMs are quite interesting. There are a few use cases where you can use both, and especially some use cases where we don't recommend using these type of solutions because for various reasons they are not adapted to these use cases. Here are just a few on the right side of the slide. First of all, if you're targeting a BYOD environment, if your enterprise is rolling out bring your own device policies and that you want to make apps available on corporate but also personal devices, especially personal devices, we don't recommend using an MDM. First of all, because of privacy concerns, which can reduce your adoption to as low as 25%. Typically, the workers will worry that the company will have too much access on their data, health, messages, photos, contacts, and stuff like this. And there's also a risk that the company may delete all the users' data because they have that much access. A second reason in this context not to use the MDM is that often these solutions are not very user-friendly. So it's going to be more difficult to drive the adoption across all the users. Another use case where you want to avoid using an MDM is when you need a rapid app deployment, when you want to test apps very quickly or deploy them very quickly to very targeted users. MDMs are usually a bit too big a solution to deploy very targeted and fast deployments. One last use case that is really not recommended for MDMs is when you want to deploy apps to partners. If you want, if you have employees that are or workers that are not part of your company and to whom you want to address apps that will make communication with your company easier, we don't recommend using MDM. First, because they may already have an MDM on their side, plus you don't want to start taking control of devices that are not your own company's devices. I wanted to move on now to an MAM solution. So what is an MAM actually? Unlike, so it's mobile application management tool. Unlike MDM that is very device-centric, MAM technology focuses on application access and data access, and rather than locking down the whole device, they will just make sure that access will be only made for authorized users like employees or business partners. That way, it gives the possibility for the IT administrators and the IT security teams to provide an environment where apps and updates can be pushed without any risk for fraud or unwanted access to corporate data. So the way it works is that usually the end users have access to a private app store where they can download the corporate apps and resources, but they cannot, these data and resources cannot interact with the personal apps that the user already has on the device. And on the administrator side, they have a centralized dashboard to manage the whole app lifecycle, and the device is authorized. So in these use cases, MAM solutions are particularly well advised when you have unmanaged devices in BYOD context, in partners context. We recommend using an MAM solution because these type of devices cannot be reached with an MDM. So now I've said a bit earlier that you have solutions that do MDM, some solutions do MAM, some solutions do both. So why not choose the one that do the two types and just roll out with this? Actually, this is experimentally, this is not proof to be, this has not been proved to be right to use one solution for both. Actually, the Gartner saw that some companies still prefer to use a separate mobile application management tool from the MDM tool. actually predicts that this year 30% of the organizations will have at least 2 tools to manage all the apps. Now, how come? Because usually you say, okay, one solution is easier to manage than 2. First of all, they have 2 different philosophy. One will secure the device, will prioritize securing the device, locking it down. The other one is mainly focused on distributing apps. Then there's other reasons. The first one is pricing. It has to do with the difference because standalone MAM solution usually tend to cost less per user than MDM licensing. So companies will prefer to focus MDM licensing where it's needed rather than deploying it to everyone, and they will use MAM licenses for unmanaged devices. But there's a bit more to it than the pricing only. The MAM offers a way to manage application and their data on unmanaged devices. And ultimately, the data has far more value. A data breach can cost millions of dollars for the company. When just changing a phone, it's just a few dollars, a few $100s. So sometimes they would prefer to choose a very specialized MAM tool rather than a generic solution, so that they are sure that the data is well controlled and is controlled with relevant policies. There's also the privacy issues when you are using when you want to deploy apps to employees on personal devices, but sometimes even on corporate devices. You have limitations on European compliance requirements. For instance, you shouldn't track the GPS data or be able to completely wipe the device. So when you have this context where privacy becomes more and more important, and people are more and more aware of their privacy rights, using an MDM is not really recommended, and you want to choose an MAM to control just what you need to control rather than controlling the whole device. We start to see transitions from companies that had only MDMs to having both solutions. Some of our clients actually do have the 2 solutions that coexist, like Leroy Merlin or EDF, with whom we work, and they choose to have both solutions: MDM for very specific devices and MAM solutions for a more global targeting. So now that we've seen the different solutions, I wanted to give you just a few tips and tricks to know when you want the best practices actually when you want to deploy apps, and when you want to deploy an EMM solution in your company. Sorry, I switched slide there. One of the first key points is not to forget to leverage the cloud. This is something that is sometimes overlooked. It comes from all the habits in the IT security teams to have on-premise solutions, make sure that they are on your servers, and this means security. Actually, the cloud shouldn't be overlooked because it gives you a lot of really big advantages. First of all, it reduces the time investment needed and allows you to have a quick setup to start your deployments. It requires fewer hardware and fewer human resources, and at last it reduces the installation and maintenance costs compared to on-premise solutions. So all this makes money well spared that you can invest on developing apps and developing good apps for the employees. Another point for the cloud solution is that it's very flexible and scalable. So when you need more apps, more users, it's very easy to scale up if needed or scale down when needed. You don't need to add servers and make sure that you have the correct version and so on. And one last thing about security, because that's how I started with this. Actually, now it becomes more and more clear that cloud solutions are actually more secure in some aspect because they benefit from all the latest security patches, and you're sure to have the latest version available. So that's for the cloud. Another key point is that you need to make sure to that the solution you will choose will integrate with the whole ecosystem you have already. You want to be able to leverage the synergies between the multiple tools that you use on an everyday basis. For instance, the tool should be able to connect with your authentication protocols, or connect with the continuous integration system that you've put in place in the company. It's important not to forget these aspects. Once you've chosen the solution, it's important to plan ahead your deployments, not do it like just like this, because introducing a solution and such a solution implies a few changes in the employees' habits, which implies a change management strategy. It doesn't have to be very complex. It doesn't have to be a very advanced strategy. It's just important to have in your head a better idea of the different steps you will need to go through. It's also important to make sure that you test the solution with key users as well as top managers, so that you make sure everyone is aligned. The users need to understand how they will benefit from it, so that they can share and make sure all the users are aware of this. And the top managers need to understand what they are investing in and why it is worth it. Another point, once you've planned all this, is in your plan, actually, you should integrate the communication part. Your solution can be as easy as it can be. You will still need to communicate and explain how the solution works. You will need to provide at least a general overview of the project, give a few explanations, and if you have some detailed screenshots, it's a real plus for your deployments. I would also advise you to anticipate a need for support in the very first weeks of the launch. You will need to answer a few questions. You will have people that won't understand exactly what's happening, so you will need to be able to support these people. At last but not least, once your solution is deployed, you shouldn't forget you're not really done yet. You still need to monitor what's going on. You need to bring life to your store with apps, with updates, and so on. So what I recommend you is to, first of all, push updates regularly so that you keep users engaged. You will also need to keep an eye on analytics to identify soon enough potential issues or bug reports and stuff like this. And this is very important. I really want to stress this out, because we've seen it in the different deployments we've made. It's very important to cherish the employees' feedback. Show them that you take it into account and that you will do your best to improve the apps and the solutions that you're providing to them. It will encourage them, first of all, to give you some slack, to give you some time to do it better and to improve the apps that you provide. Plus, they may also get involved and provide new app ideas or help you in the improvement process and so on. So getting everyone involved is quite interesting in such deployments. Now, I would like to, now that we've seen the tools, we've seen what are the best practices for these tools, I'd like to move on to what do you put in these tools, because actually when you have when you choose your solution, you will also need to have in mind actually what type of apps and how many apps you will need to deploy. It's important to have this in mind already. So here I just wanted to give you a few ideas on the apps that can be provided. So I'll first start with a few generic apps that every company at some point will need. It goes from a directory app, for instance, a phone directory that will ease contact between and collaboration between employees, especially if you have a company that has very strong boundaries between the departments. It's good to have such an app that lets technically users connect with each other. One app that is also very often used and appreciated by the employees is the possibility to book a meeting room. Being able to book a meeting room in just a few seconds is quite interesting for employees that have a point they want to discuss, or be able to discuss very quickly of some specific issues. There's also often an internal news app that lets you that lets the employees get the latest news on the company. And on the more fun part, you've got companies that create apps where employees can publish the pictures they take during corporate events, so that it can be shared with the whole company. However, what often makes the difference when you start a deployments are more down-to-earth apps that are really related to the business unit needs. When the employee really needs something, and when you can improve his everyday work, this is where you can really make a difference. So I wanted to share with you just really quickly, and to wrap this up, a few use cases that we have at Appaloosa of companies that deployed really business apps, business focused app. For instance, we work with the French postal service and the 90,000 mailmen in France. They decided to modernize the way these postmen work by providing them different apps that are mission critical for them, business critical. For instance, being able to sign, to let the client sign for a package, or to calculate the road and the path they have to go when giving the packages and so on. So these were business critical apps, and they decided to deploy it using an MAM solution to make sure everybody had the latest version and the latest apps available. We also work with Jaeger LeCoultre, which is a luxury watch company. They had a different use case where they had fewer people targeted, but their main focus was agility and being able to deploy their apps very quickly, to make sure that the employees on the sales floor had the latest version to provide the clients with the latest collection of watches. So it was really key for them to be able to deploy apps very quickly, and then they decided to go with our enterprise app store to deploy the solution. And lastly, I wanted to talk to you about the Vinci use case, because I think it's quite relevant of a small app that actually helps them in their everyday work. They decided to create app for prevention on construction sites. It lists the employees and the workers, the list of the guidelines actually of what not to do and what they can do on a construction site. But not only this, it also lets them take pictures of risky situation where they think safety and security is not ensured, and report it back to the management so that they can make sure safety is improved for the next construction sites. So I think this gives you a pretty good overview of what can be done and how to deploy an EMM solution with success. What kind of corporate app do you actually use on your site, mostly at work? Do you already have some corporate apps at work? How do you use them? Or what app would you like to have in your company? This is also interesting.